Welcome to the HIT Podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we are dropping into your feed with what we hope are bite-sized, digestible, well-curated conversations going on in the space. And speaking of well-curated, we are doing a 3-part series on the sights and sounds from the floor here, live at the CAHR. We are fortunate to be the official podcast of the conference, so we're pulling in attendees, we're pulling in speakers, we're having great conversations, and this is our highlight series from those conversations. If you missed any previous weeks, go back, catch those, catch this whole series. We're excited for it. Without any further ado, this week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions, and let's get into those highlights. What's keeping you up at night in human resources?
There's a lot that keeps me up at night. Gosh. I think just employee satisfaction, employee engagement, the ever-changing status of the economy, politics, so knowing that that's on my employees' minds, just trying to stay on top of all of that.
So just to dive right in, what is something that you think is kind of keeping HR folks up at night and or should be keeping HR folks up at night?
I think right now, honestly, it's the changing political climate.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stress and frustration related to that right now, especially in the HR world, just because there's always this pending doom of like, are there going to be layoffs? Are there going to be big changes? And a lot of business owners are very unsure. So for the most part, when I'm working with my HR consulting clients, they're all small to mid-sized business owners.
Right.
And a lot of HR departments are seeing the same thing, which is business owners coming and saying, are we going to lay off? Are we going to lay off? Is it coming? Is there a recession coming?
Right.
Where are we at? And then they kind of proactively start to maybe even start a few layoffs or letting people go. And then they're putting a lot of strain on the existing employees that are left in the organization because they're not rehiring for those positions.
Right.
Then there was also the issue that happened kind of with the government and OPM, where we
What's
started
the OPM?
doing, OPM is the Office of Personnel Management for the government. So they started doing these like, hey, voluntarily lay yourself off from the government, that they're not planning on backfilling those jobs. And a lot of companies in private are now saying like, oh, well, if the government is doing all of these potential layoffs, what should we be doing?
Right.
Should we be following suit? So we're starting to see organizations, at least within my purview, that are beginning to think about maybe some layoffs here and there because of the fact that the government was doing these programs
like a canary
over
in
the
the
last
coal
couple
mine
months.
sort of thing.
Absolutely.
All right, we're back in the podcast booth, and we have returning veteran rock star Monica. Monica, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, I remember last year we were in, we sat down, we chatted. Now I'm curious, in the last year, in your opinion, what has changed in HR? What's keeping you up at night now? What do we need to focus on today, a year later?
Well, it's funny that you asked because that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's what you asked me last time.
Yeah.
What is keeping you up at night?
She spent 12 months preparing for today. That's it? That's good?
At the time I was like, I'm not letting anybody keep me up at night. But I've been thinking about it, and I think it's mental health.
Yeah.
And not so much, of course, is anything that's diagnosed, but more so what is not being diagnosed.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's a lot of employees that don't accept. Sometimes they haven't come to terms with situations they're going through.
Yeah.
And they are bringing those situations to the workplace.
Yeah.
And HR professionals, sometimes we are not as well equipped to deal with those.
If you look back on the last year and like look forward, if you're an HR practitioner saying, all right, Shelly, like what give me a heads up here. What do you think? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I would say anybody who is contemplating a career in HR really needs to be prepared for anything and everything. I mean, I look back, when I talk to some folks and like, oh yeah, the greatest generation, they went through the wars. I'm like, well, yeah, I've been through some interesting things. I mean, I never thought if somebody would have said, hey, you're going to go through, this is how old I am, if you were going to go through the .com bust, Y2K, the Great Recession,
9/11.
wildfires, 9/11, COVID,
Right.
more wildfires this year, especially in Southern California. And then now what we're experiencing, between immigration and politics, it's a tough time, and we HR practitioners, we're supposed to weave everything together for our employees and team members, and weaving it through the generations, through all the expectations, and ensure that we're all aligned to the organization's strategy and produce. That's ultimately what we're employed to do.
Yeah.
And that's a tall order.
Oh, it's a huge order. I had someone joke, they're like, I was talking about unprecedented times, like, hey, you live in precedented times. Like, that's not how I greet people. Like, I'm so sick of living through history. And as you said, you've got these big moments, and they kind of keep coming, and your job along the way is, my mom was a flight attendant, and the joke was always, when they're sitting in the jump seat, if there's turbulence, people look at the flight attendant. If the flight attendant's freaking out, I'm going to freak out. Right. But if they keep steady, we're good, right? And you're just like, hey, in HR, like, when we're hitting the quote-unquote turbulence, it is not only your job to not freak out, but to keep the blood, the lifeline of the company, the heart beating.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot for me to freak out, honestly, So I know my team looks to me, and I'm always like, that's interesting. Let's keep trucking on. Like, how do we resolve that, right? And sometimes I don't always have an immediate go-to, and it takes me a little while to process that. But I think when you have a good working relationship with all of your executives, we all pull in.
Anything else before we let you go? Because I know you are actually here for the conference, not to sit down and let me talk your ear off.
I was like,
I just when I find people that are so clearly succeeding, and I just think if we can get a couple of those nuggets and get them in the platform and get them out to people to hear. Is there anything else that like you've seen in your career that we haven't touched on yet that you just think like, hey, you know what? Here's a little tidbit, or for let an each one teach one sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've got this piece of advice.
For me, I think I went a lot of time. I think a lot of HR people deal with imposter syndrome. We're doing all these things and we think that we're not adequate for some reason. I just built an entire department. I'm still like, oh, can I do this? And that's something for me where I really had to no, girl, you're good. You are doing the thing. You know what I mean? You are here. And so I would just encourage anybody who's in HR, any field really, you're feeling that imposter syndrome, just give yourself some grace. Remind yourself what you've done, and you were, and I always remind myself too, they could have picked anybody. And they trusted me to do something. And I did such a great job that now they want me to do it again, right? And so I kind of use that okay, no, you got
There's a quote out there that's something along the lines of people way less qualified than you are doing the job you want because they just believed in themselves.
Exactly. It's literally that. Yeah. And it's funny because in my real life, I'm very confident. I walk with a confidence, and then I do the same professionally, but internally, that inner saboteur will get you. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you can't do this. You're only one person, you can't do this, but you can though. Anybody who's battling like that, it's really your inner. And so I would just my advice is tell your inner saboteur to shut up, okay? And that you can do it,
I hear you. And I think that's cool for you to say because it's nice for people to hear that it's not like them. They're not uniquely touched by a saboteur. We all have one.
Oh yeah.
We just need to be reminded everyone has that, and all those people that you look at and they're successful, they're feeling that too. And it's like, yo, just go on.
Every level. Everybody feels a decent level of inner saboteur. RuPaul Charles is actually the person who said the inner saboteur. That's where I first heard it on RuPaul's Drag Race. It's one of my favorite shows. And he always talks about it, and it's just something that always resonated with me because I'm like, I start to doubt myself, and I'm like, girl, inside, no, absolutely not. We're not doing that today, That's it.
Love it. I cannot think of a better get out than that. Talia, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate having you on.
Thanks.
And enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, we're back in the booth, and we've got the one, the only, Danon Simpson, the founder, the CEO. What's going on? Yeah, people are clapping in the background.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Toby?
Good. One of the questions I've been asking the HR practitioners is sort of what's keeping you up at night? What's going on in your world? And each one of them brings their own kind of unique vantage, but you obviously work with many, many HR people every day of your life.
I do.
Curious, your thoughts, what's going on, what's current in the HR world that's kind of a bee in the bonnet?
Well, I have to tell you, I listened to the UKG speaker today,
Yeah.
and she was amazing.
Yeah.
She talked about doing this big nationwide survey and asking all these HR people, like, what is the most important thing to
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
And they were saying HR needs HR. They're burnt out, they're tired, and I just think, that's so important for leaders to know, executive leaders,
Yeah.
that HR teams, they need some love too, and
Yeah.
because they're so busy taking care of everyone else,
Yeah.
and it's challenging today. It's just very different, and so I like that speech a lot.
Like the therapist needs a therapist,
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for you here on the show. Catch our whole highlight series. We're excited about doing the sights and sounds from the conference. So join us next week. Blessed to be here. Thank you to our sponsors, Rula, Excel Health, TrueHue, the guys who keep the lights on, Montage Insurance Solutions, and thank you guys for watching. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.